In this section, we're going to look at Excel functions that evaluate data based on a single criteria. The three functions that we'll focus on are the COUNTIF function, AVERAGEIF, and the SUMIF function. I have a column of data here, 3 months sales figures. They go down here to row 32 with March. Let's use the COUNTIF function to examine some of the characteristics of this data. Let's count the number of sales where the amounts exceed $200. So we can place the COUNTIF function here, COUNTIF. The syntax asks us for the range and the criteria. Well, the range is the values in column D, rows 7 through 32, comma, now it wants the criteria. Well, I'm going to enter, I have to put it in quotes, greater than, not greater than or equal to, but greater than 200, and close the parentheses. 19. Now the problem with this cell is that we have hard-coded the greater than 200 in there. What if we wanted to consider values greater than 300, greater than 400? We have to go in and change that every time. So let's change this formula a little bit. Let's put the value out here that will serve as our criteria. And let's tell this function to look at that cell and put that criteria in there. I'm going to introduce you to the term concatenation. Concatenation is where we put two strings or a string and a value, whatever, we put those together. So I'm going to take the greater than sign. I'm going to use my concatenation symbol, which is the ampersand. Then I'm going to point to that cell. Now you'll notice that I've put a space between the quote and the ampersand and a space after the ampersand before the cell reference. That's important. I press enter and it counts the number of sales with amounts greater than $200. Now if I wanted to count the number of sales with amounts greater than $900, I could do that. It would give me the answer. Now that's, again, good, but it only works for the greater than criteria. What if I wanted to look at something less than or greater than or equal to? Well, let's put the greater than symbol right here. And I'll justify that to the right so it's over the number. And then let's use concatenation again to look at the symbol itself. So we'll take this out and we'll point to this cell. Press enter. There are the number of amounts greater than 900. Here are the number of amounts less than 900, the number of amounts that equal 900, that are greater than or equal to 900, or less than or equal to 900. That gives us a lot of versatility with that formula. I'm going to use another formula that will show you the formula in a particular cell. We'll say equals formula text, and then I'll point to this cell. That makes it a little easier to see what we've put in there. I'm going to indent that a bit so it isn't quite as cluttered. So that's the formula that we decided to use to count the amounts with values, in this case, less than or equal to 900. Now let's look at the average if function. Let's find the average sales of a particular salesperson. So we'll look at average if. And it asks us for 3 criteria here. One of them is optional. It wants the range of values where it will look up the criteria. Well, I'm going to look for sales rep. I want to look for Albert's average sales. So I'll select Albert. I'll put in Albert. And then when I find Albert in a row, a record, I want to go to the amount column and enter the sales for Albert. That gives me that value. I'll decrease the decimals a little bit just to show just cents. Now you might ask yourself, why didn't we do in this cell what we did with COUNTIF? That's a good question. Why don't we? We'll put Albert here. We'll go in here and change Albert. It's equal to, we'll just put the value. We don't have to put a sign if it's equal. And it gives us the sales for Albert. Again, let's use this formula text function to show the formula that we've put in there. All right, let's average the new accounts. So we'll take the criteria here as new. We'll go ahead and enter average if. The range we want to look at is the account type. The criteria is going to be new. We'll put that over there. And when we find a record with new as the account type, we want to go to the amount column and get the value that's there and average that. I'll increase that decimal to show cents. I'll go ahead and copy that down to show the formula text so you can see it. So that's good. We have the new account types. Now let's look at the old account types. Now we get an error message. There aren't any old account types. Instead of using new and old, we chose to use new and existing. These are the kinds of problems that you can encounter. We need to put existing here. But what's to keep a user from entering old and then being confused why they're not getting the old and not bothering to look over here and see that we didn't use old, we used existing, when old is the opposite of new. One of the things that we can do to eliminate that problem is use data validation. And I go to the Data tab here, go to Data Validation on the Data tab ribbon, select Data Validation. Rather than allow any value in the field, I'm going to limit values that can be entered into this field to 2. New, comma, and then no space, just type existing. And I'm going to give a message. I'm going to make this a stop style. I could just warn, I could inform, but I don't want to allow anything other than new or existing. So I'm going to set the style to stop. I'll just put a title on this error message of data entry error. And I'll say, please select a value from the list. And say, OK. Now you can see I get a choice, new or existing. And if I try to enter, say I have new here, and I try to type old in here, I get this message, data entry error, which is a title I entered, and please select a value from the list. So I can cancel that, which sends me back to my previous value, which was correct, new, and I go in and select existing. I could type existing or type new, either way, as long as it's a value from the list. Let's look at the sum if statement. Let's sum if. Again, we have the range and the criteria, much like the average if. I'll just take month as the range, and I will sum sales for January. And if I find a record with January, I'll go ahead and get the corresponding amount from that record. Sum those values. They might ask, why don't you do the same thing you did with the average if? So I will. I'll go ahead and put January here. So I'll enter sum if, select months, select my criteria, and if I find a record with January in the month, I'll go ahead and get the value from the amount column, do that calculation. Now I can enter February, and I get the total for February. I'll use the formula text function. And that is a summary of Excel functions that evaluate data based on a single criteria.